Hello everyone, I'm Denis Poisson and this is the Foolish Fish Esoteric and Occult book Roundup for the month of September 2024. These are all the books that I received last month. So thank you so much for joining me. We're going to start off with this one, Dyonisus. So this is a classic book. Dyonisus, Myth and Cult by Walter F. Otto. This is actually a book that was recommended to me by Jack Grail, and if Jack Grail is going to recommend a book to me, I'm certainly not going to pass that up. And sure enough, folks, it's fantastic. It's in several parts. Yes, it is kind of old-fashioned. Yes, it is written in a style that's a little bit stuffy, but it's definitely not difficult to follow. If your vocabulary is of a reasonable level, then there's no problem here. I'll be showing you a book in a little while where, yeah, your reading age doesn't really matter. It's just completely obscure what's being suggested. But this one, no, it's actually a pleasure to read. It's very well written. It's written by an academic quite clearly. He's somebody who really knows what he's talking about and somebody who's really researched his topic. And it's written in a way that suggests that he actually cared about his audience understanding what he was writing about. And, you know, to have this kind of deep research on the topic of Dionysus is of great value to me. I'm very interested in the figure of Dionysus, what Dionysus represents, well, everything to do with his mystery cults and everything surrounding Dionysus in general. So I'm very, very happy with this particular book. It's central and very important to my personal research. So yeah, that's a fantastic one, and I can recommend it to anyone who's interested in Dionysus. Yeah, as I say, who is okay with a sustained medium to high reading level, right? But nothing that is designed to obfuscate what is being written, and also where the author clearly is making a real effort to make some complicated concepts clear. And yeah, I can't ask for anything more than that. That is absolutely fantastic. Yeah, so that's Dionysus, Myth and Cult by Walter F. Otto. When was this originally released? It was like in the 60s, wasn't it? I think so 1960 was the original German, and the first translation appeared in 1965. And it's a very good translation, I really have to say. It reads very well, and it's full of great information. So that's Dionysus, Myth and Cult by Walter F. Otto. The one that I was just talking about where the contents aren't quite as clear, it's this one, All Things Are Full of Gods, David Bentley Hart. I wanted to like this so much. If you saw my news video where I was talking about this, you'll know how excited I was for the topic here. Well, All Things Are Full of Gods arrived, and the first thing that surprised me was the size of the book, right? And, you know, that's great. You're getting value for money. There's no question about that. I think we're looking at about 500 pages, something along those lines. Yeah, around 500 pages. Something like that. The idea is that the author, David Bentley Hart, who has had many successful other books, wanted to talk about realism versus idealism, writing in the form of conversations, so thinking about Plato and so on. David Bentley Hart takes the four characters of Psyche and Eros and Hephaestus and Hermes, and has them having a conversation about the nature of mind. How perfect does that sound? You know, how ideal does that sound especially for me? You know, this is central to what I'm interested in: the mind, the relation of the mind to the divine, and the relation of reality to the mind. These are, I can't think of more important topics. I can't think of topics that are more central to my own personal interests. And so I started reading this so full of excitement. I read the introduction, which is a very interesting introduction. I read the little preface that comes over here on the characters and the settings of the dialogue, explaining why the author wrote it this way. And yeah, and then this conversation starts. And, you know, I read this first page and I was thinking, my goodness, like it's not particularly easy to follow already. And then Hephaestus says, I can't honestly say that this is the most enthralling tale you've ever told. And I'm thinking, well, why have this on your first page then? Right? Why start this way if you already know that this isn't gripping stuff? And then, you know, again, my dear Psyche, as enchanting a raconteuse as you usually are, I can't pretend to find any of this nearly as absorbing as you evidently do. And I have to agree, you know, I have to agree. I'll tell you what, folks, I managed to sustain my attention, certainly not my interest, for 23 pages. I'm going to read for you just this one little paragraph. Bear with me, it's worth it. You'll see. Again, what's natural, Hephaestus says. I tend to take it to mean physical, Psyche says. Well, that we can debate. But I must commend you, Feisty, for having so quickly recognized that the issue of the origin of structure of the mind is inseparable from that of the origin and structure of life. That's very astute of you indeed, because inevitably both issues center upon one and the same question, whether, that is, a purely mechanistic understanding of nature, or its many descendants, or sequels or variants, such as philosophical naturalism or physicalism, can be made to account for the very things that had to be subtracted from the picture of nature in early modernity in order to produce the mechanical philosophy to begin with. That is, can mechanism explain what mechanism originally abstained from trying to explain on principle? For certain reasons, incidentally, I would add language to the list of intrinsically irreducible realities. And, you know, at that point I was like, okay, no, I'm sorry. You clearly don't care about me following you. You clearly care about following your own train of thought, which is great. Follow your own train of thought, but then don't publish it as a book and expect me to read it. You know, it's not fair. You need to understand your own train of thought and then present it to me in logical steps that don't involve me having to take in, you know, 2-page sentences. I'm sorry. That's not okay. It's not okay. So there we go. Unfortunately, that's all I can really say about this. I'm sure it's thrilling to people who like these kinds of, you know, who have time and patience to engage with this kind of writing, but I don't. So that was a disappointment. All things are full of gods. As I say, just because it wasn't for me doesn't mean that it can't be for you. You saw the little table of contents there. Could actually be quite cool for some people. Let's move on to another book on the topic of the mind and consciousness, which is actually fantastic, and that is Maps of Consciousness. This is, again, a classic text, and you'll be able to see it's actually something like the 10th edition of this book. It's been out for a little while. The classic text on exploring the mind and expanding awareness by Ralph Metzner, PhD, with a foreword by David E. Presti. So this is a book by a scholar who was a contemporary of Timothy Leary's and Ram Dass and so on and so forth, who was very interested in, once again, the nature of mind. But his approach was to look at these 6 traditions: I Ching, Tantra, Tarot, Alchemy, Astrology, and Actualism, and to understand the nature of the mind through those lenses. Folks, it's absolutely fascinating. If you're interested in Western esotericism, in Western occultism, in any form or shape, you're going to love this. If you're interested in the concept of the nature of mind also, you know, because it brings it all together and it's just lovely. It's really, really cool. So this was written, was it the 70s, I believe? Let me just take a look at the beginning over here, 1971 by Ralph Metzner. I'm not sure the author actually wrote this. This was a conversation I was having with my wife. Knowing the writing style of the author that you can just find from any other page, that dedication doesn't seem quite right. The style of writing, once again, is a well-informed academic style, which is going to be accessible to most readers and very enjoyable to read. Yeah. Very, very nice stuff. Maps of Consciousness. It's actually available as an audiobook as well. You can find that on Audible. Right, next we've got the new paperback edition of the Terra Volatile companion book to the wonderful Terra Volatile tarot deck. So as many of you probably already know, the Terra Volatile tarot deck is my tarot deck of choice. It has been since I received it. I think it's been a couple of years now. It's now on to its second set of card sleeves for me. The first set of card sleeves, believe it or not, has been worn to a bone, and this is what the original hardcover version of this book looked like. So every single card reproduced in a large format with a description of the card next to it. Well, this paperback edition does not contain the illustrations. It's essentially a much cheaper but also much more portable edition of the book. It's got all the same information. Oh, by the way, it's got a nice little preface, a little foreword by someone you might recognize. And I really enjoyed writing that for sure. And then, yeah, if you go inside, it's all got the same information. This is for people who have the deck and didn't necessarily want to spend all that money on the hardcover edition, which I think is out of print right now. There may be a new print coming up. I'm going to leave links to all of this down in the description as always anyway. Yeah, as you can imagine, this is significantly less expensive and it will fit into your bag. You know, you can take it along with you. It's much like there's no comparison in terms of the weight. This is much heavier. It's a lovely book to have on your shelf, of course. This is for those of you who just want the information, and it's great information, by the way. This is a highly symbolic deck. Lots and lots of very cool esoteric and occult symbols, which are all described in the book. There we go. That's the paperback edition of the Terra Volatile tarot deck, the pocket edition by Credo Quia Absurdum. Fantastic stuff. All right, next up, we've got a big star for this month, folks. This is Aman Lamba's The Magical Art, published by Hadean Press. This is a translation and transcription of a grimoire which inspired the Grimorium Verum. So yeah, very essential stuff going on right here. And obviously the whole occult community is very grateful to Hadean Press and to Aman Lamba for bringing this to us. So this is the translation. You'll be able to see that on the side with the translation, all of the sigils have been reproduced in a neater version by S. Alderney, whose work you might recognize from what he did for the Book of Oberon, for example, right? And lots of many others actually since. So yeah, this is what you get on the translation side. And on the transcription side, which is in kind of old French, very old French, you get photographs of the sigils as they originally were, so you can compare and decide for yourself if S. Alderney did a good job or not. I could tell you he really did. Fantastic job there. So yes, I think that if you're interested in grimoires, Solomonic magic in general, possibly interested in catalogues of demons, also the Shem HaMeforash, by the way. This has got some significant work with the 72 angels of the explicit name of God. And yeah, I think that this is just very interesting stuff, and the introduction there by Aman Lamba is worth the entry price on its own. There we go. That's The Magical Art, the Welcome Manuscript 983, L'Art Magique. Now, in my last news video, I showed you dark arts and crafts, and I told you how excited I was to show it to you during my roundup. So here's a close look. So it's a relatively pretty mass market hardcover book. The cover is it's matte paper on board, and there's this really nice metallic stamp on the cover. So it's by Tehani Parham and Peter Coleman, who have collaborated to bring us essentially an introduction to magic. But it's going to be great fun to read this for many magicians who have been doing magic for quite a long time. Just while I'm showing you the outside here, it might be worth mentioning that the book is made in Australia, so very, very easily accessible to our friends in Australia. It's very rare that it's the case, right? It's usually books that are produced in Europe or in the United States. But yes, it's also available worldwide, and I'll leave links to that down below as well. The idea is that you've got 13 projects, 13 little magic spells that are very accessible, very easy to do, and produce some nice effects. And alongside these spell recipes, you could say, you have some history of magic in the West by Peter Coleman. And so he's essentially going over the essential parts of Western history of magic and giving you some funny details. He's picked out some details from magical history that might raise a smile, and it's just written in a very enjoyable, light-hearted way, and a really nice gift, I would say, for your magic curious cousin or friend, who's kind of going, so what is all this magic you're into? You could easily give them something like this so that they could try some things out themselves. And it's a very pretty book, as you can see as well, right? The information's accurate. The spells are, I'm going to say, good for a beginner. The kind of nice stuff that people can do without getting their fingers burnt too badly, just to get a feel for what it's like to perform a spell. And it's really nice, really, really lovely. That's Dark Arts and Crafts, 13 Spells for Love, Money and Self-Care by Tehani Parham and Peter Coleman. Really nice. Okay, the next book on my list is this one right here, Astrology for Real Life, and that is a workbook for beginners by Teresa Reed. And folks, I've been looking for introduction books for astrology to recommend, and until now I've been able to recommend this one that I did a review for, Astrology Using the Wisdom of the Stars in Your Everyday Life by Carol Taylor. You can check out my review for that. And I would say that this is still probably the one that I'd recommend to magicians wanting the basics of astrology, who aren't intending to become astrologers, but who need to know at least the basics, because the basics are so essential, so necessary to understanding pretty much anything else in magic. This is the one I think that I'm going to start recommending for people looking for their first steps in actual astrology. So people who are looking to become astrology specialists, I think this is a really great step number one. And the reason I say this is because everything in here is, well, very accurate, but then that's the case over here as well. So yes, this is all very accurate stuff. I think it goes a little bit deeper. I think it goes a little bit wider as well. And I think that the fact that the author gives so many resources, so many names of other books to read, so many really nice little exercises that you can complete within the book itself, it really is a little workbook. And I think that coming out the other side of this one, you are probably better equipped to then go and learn more than you would be over here. As I say, I think this is a perfect little packaged version of astrology for people who aren't intending to take astrology much further. This is an initiation per se, right? A beginning step for becoming an actual astrologer, and he'll give you an overview of what else there is to learn that cannot fit into a little book like that. So yeah, I think Teresa Reed's done a fantastic job here, a no BS guide for the astro curious, no kidding. And this was in 2019, published by Wiser Books. Yeah, as I say, I think I'm going to be recommending this going forwards. Great stuff. Now, I've got another book by Wiser. It's called Baphomet Revealed. Actually, I say it's Wiser. It's actually an imprint from Red Wheel Wiser called New Page. And yeah, the book is by Heather Lynn, PhD. And it's a little book, as you can see, not very large. The subheader is Mysteries and Magic of the Sacred Icon. And folks, this is a book that was missing on the market. Can you believe it? I think this was really nice. It's very easily accessible. Recommendations here by both Travis McHenry and John Michael Greer. And I was just reading the introduction over here, and let me just read you this first passage just to see if this is of any interest to you. Of all arcane symbols, few provoke as much fascination and controversy as the complex and multi-layered symbol Baphomet. The origin and history of this most infamous of devilish images may surprise you. The icon of Baphomet, so often linked with profane devil worship, originated from the mind of a French Catholic priest, a deeply faithful man known as Eliphas Lévy. Far from being a symbol of malevolence, the figure Lévy drew was intended to represent love, unity, and spiritual wisdom. Lévy termed this blend of mysticism and esoteric understanding of the faith true Catholicism, keeping in mind that Catholic comes from the Greek word katholikos, which means universal or according to the whole. There we go. Very interesting stuff, folks. It's nicely written. It just goes through part by part the various symbols present in Baphomet and looking at the history of those symbols, looking at how those symbols have been represented in the past and why they make sense all together in this very interesting symbol of, well, it would seem universal true Catholicism. There we go. Very interesting stuff. Yeah, so that's by Heather Lynn, PhD. Okay, now this was a gift from Frater Setnak. This is a book that was written by his sister. It's called Insatiable Desires Written in Blood, and it's by Soror Vanarotha. And I think it's worth my pointing out that I am absolutely not the right audience for this book. Soror Vanarotha has written poems, quite a large book actually, and it's Smithsonian's, quite nicely made and very lavishly illustrated with classic occult images and artwork. The poems are very nice, no doubt. It's just that I'm not a poem guy. I do like a very select few poems. I'm very difficult to please in terms of poetry. So no, this is not for me, but I think it might be for many people out there who do appreciate poetry. I think it's not a secret that I don't enjoy poetry. I think I've mentioned it several times on my channel. But yeah, this is a very pretty book in its own right. The book is, it's paper on cardboard, and there's some rather nice thick end papers. There's a red ribbon, and I think it'll make quite a pretty gift for anyone who's interested in rather gothic poetry and rather gothic aesthetic. There we go. Yeah, quite nice stuff by Soror Vanarotha. I'll leave links to that down below. Insatiable Desires Written in Blood. And finally, we've got a tarot deck, folks, by Nancy Hendrickson and Carrie Paris. And those of you who watched my overview of my own deck, the Foolish Fish Folk and Fairy Tale Cards of Fate and Fortune, will maybe recognize the name Carrie Paris. She's the one who helped me to get my project realized. and to go from just the idea of a deck to an actual creation, right? So there we go. That's the Ofrenda Oracle. Now this is a deck that is based on the Day of the Dead. You can see that's the subheading there, celebrating the Day of the Dead, honoring past ancestors, nurturing future generations, with artwork by Angelica Castro. There's a little book in there that's got a foreword by Laura Davila, author of Mexican Sorcery, which I think I was mentioning in my news some weeks ago. The Ofrenda Oracle, a guide to the cards. This is what the little booklet looks like. Each card is represented in color, and you get a little description of the card itself, both in English and in Spanish, which is really cool. I rather like the art in here. It's very vibrant, very right for the Day of the Dead kind of aesthetic. It's a vector image feel, which is not usually a feel that I particularly love, but I think it works perfectly for this particular deck. And it's an oracle deck, right? So it's an oracle deck rather than a tarot deck. Let me show you the cards over here. They're kind of poker card sized, and this is what the back of the card looks like, which I think is really cool, with the little bone fingers there. And this is what the front of the card looks like. The cards are really nice quality, and they're quite a thick card stock. I certainly don't feel like they would suffer very much from repeated use, and they're just really lovely, very, very, very pretty. And again, if the vector image style doesn't bother you, then this is a really, really nice deck featuring the Day of the Dead. There we go. Very, very nice. Let me show you a few more. Pretty stuff, right? There we are. That's what I've got for you for this week. Thank you so much for watching the video, folks. If you'd like to support the channel and help me get more books for next month, then the best way to do it is to join the Patreon. And I just want to send out a big thank you to all members of all varieties and all levels, and in particular the Level Infinity members who support the channel in a very, very significant way. So David Venturini, Caitlin Kopok, Linda Hendricks, Stephen Hunter, Susanna Red Elves, and Thomas. Thank you so much, as well as to all the Level 3 members whose names you can see scrolling up on the left over here. If you did enjoy the video, don't forget to leave a thumbs up, click on that like button, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. All of that really helps the channel. And then there's going to be a poll, of course, to know which of the books that I've shown you today you'd like to see reviewed in its own full review next month. As always, a little reminder that if you'd like to have a one-to-one conversation with me, there are options to do that. Just check out the links down below. And finally, thank you to everyone who's made it to the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and see you very soon with another video. Bye-bye.